They whispered your name. Not with honor. Not with reverence. Not with the recognition that you carried something sacred within you. They whispered it with smirks curling on their lips, with sarcasm dripping in their tone, with dismissal written in their eyes. To them, your name was a punchline, a casual reference in conversations where people gathered not to understand you, but to misunderstand you more deeply. They whispered your name in quiet kitchens, around family tables, in offices where polite smiles masked judgment. They whispered it as if speaking of you carried no weight, as if your warnings were no more than idle noise. They thought the whispering was harmless. But they did not know that whispers are never harmless. Whispers carry energy. Whispers travel through the unseen currents of life. And every whisper they spoke of you was fuel for the revelation that was already approaching. They rolled their eyes. Oh, how they rolled their eyes. You remember those moments, don't you? The subtle, dismissive flicker of disdain whenever you tried to explain what you saw. Every time you offered a warning, every time you pointed to patterns only you could see, every time you tried to shine a light on what was coming, their eyes rolled with practiced arrogance. That rolling was meant to silence you. It was meant to reduce your insight to foolishness. It was their way of saying, we are above this. We are smarter than this. We don't need your perspective. They thought the rolling of eyes was a shield, but in truth, it was a mirror. Each eye roll revealed not your ignorance, but theirs. Each dismissal they offered was not a reflection of your lack, but of their blindness. They didn't realize then that the very eyes they rolled were the eyes that could not see. They dismissed your warnings. How easily they brushed them aside. They called you negative, as if truth itself was pessimism. They called you overthinking, as if deep discernment was a flaw. They called you difficult, as if refusing to be blind was rebellion against comfort. Their dismissal was casual, sometimes laced with laughter, sometimes with pity, sometimes with a condescending kindness that pretended to care but cut deeper than cruelty. They thought that by ignoring your words they were freeing themselves. But what they were really doing was binding themselves tighter to the chains of their illusions. They mistook your vision for fear. They mistook your discernment for weakness. They mistook your warnings for noise. But every dismissal was recorded in the quiet chambers of the universe. Every word they disregarded was stored like sacred data, waiting for the appointed time to resurface. But now, chosen one, yes, now, everything changes. For all of this was not wasted. None of it was random. The whispers, the eye rolls, the dismissals, they were not the end of your story, but the beginning. They were not the proof of your failure, but the proof of your placement. Because destiny always begins in shadows. Greatness always begins in misunderstanding. The chosen are always marked first by rejection before they are recognized by revelation. And you, chosen one, have walked through that valley of rejection, carrying seeds no one else could see. Seeds that were mocked. Seeds that were trampled. Seeds that were dismissed as worthless. Yet seeds do not need applause to grow. They need only time, silence, and soil. And that is what their dismissal gave you, soil. While they whispered, you grew. While they rolled their eyes, your roots sank deeper. While they dismissed you, your vision sharpened. They thought they were burying you, but they were planting you. They thought they were silencing you, but they were giving your silence power. They thought they were weakening you, but they were positioning you for strength beyond their comprehension. Every mocking word became a weight pressing you into the earth of destiny, and every weight became the very pressure that forced growth no one else could see. And now, the moment has come. The soil is breaking. The hidden is emerging. The time of dismissal is over. Until now, your truth was hidden, your warnings ignored, your name whispered like a shadow. But until now is not forever. Until now is only the threshold. And now, chosen one, you stand at the crossing. For the same mouths that whispered your name in mockery will soon speak it with reverence. The same eyes that rolled in dismissal will soon bow in apology. The same hearts that refused your warnings will soon tremble at the accuracy of your vision. Look around. The montage has begun. One by one, the examples are unfolding like a carefully written script. That business deal they celebrated, the one you warned about, the one they said you were overanalyzing, has collapsed into rubble, taking reputations and wealth with it. That relationship they defended with stubborn blindness, the one you quietly pointed out cracks in, has shattered in the most public and painful way. That figure they trusted blindly, the one you said wore a mask, has finally revealed their face to the world, and the shock is rippling through every conversation. Scene after scene, collapse after collapse, unveiling after unveiling, the truth is breaking through, and with every revelation, their memory is awakened. They are beginning to remember your words. They are beginning to recall the warnings they laughed at. They are beginning to realize that what they dismissed was never paranoia. It was vision. That what they mocked was never negativity. It was discernment. That what they called overthinking was never weakness. It was wisdom. And now, the whispers are turning. The conversations have shifted. Where once they whispered your name in judgment, now they whisper it in awe. Where once they dismissed your sight, now they question how you saw what they could not. Where once they rolled their eyes, now they lower their heads, ashamed of their blindness. The sound of your name is changing in their mouths. It no longer drips with mockery. It trembles with recognition. It carries weight now. The weight of regret. The weight of realization. The weight of truth. Chosen one, the world is about to realize what you have known all along. And it will not come as a gentle awakening. It will come as a storm. A storm of memory, a storm of guilt, a storm of revelation that will strike their hearts with lightning precision. They will remember every time they doubted you, every time they silenced you, every time they turned your truth into a joke. And they will replay those moments not with pride, but with shame. They will feel the sting of their own blindness. They will taste the bitterness of their own arrogance. They will know, beyond a shadow of doubt, that they were wrong. And you were right. This is the hook, chosen one. This is the beginning of your revelation. The whispers cannot contain you anymore. The dismissals cannot bury you anymore. The eye rolls cannot silence you anymore. The tide has turned. The pattern is undeniable. And the universe itself is stepping forward to declare what you always knew in the depths of your being. You were never the fool. You were never the paranoid. You were never the problem. You were the vision, the voice, the light they could not understand. And now, at last, they will. For years, you walked a road that felt lonelier than anyone around you could ever understand. You worked in silence, often alone, surrounded by the quiet hum of thoughts too heavy to share. Nights found you awake long after the world had gone to sleep, the glow of a desk lamp your only companion, your papers and notes scattered like fragments of a map only you could read. Others saw your late nights as obsession, as wasted energy, as overthinking that drained you. But you knew, even when you could not explain it, that what you were carrying was not obsession. It was vision. It was preparation. You sat at that desk with questions that no one else dared to ask. You traced patterns in the chaos that others ignored. You watched the movements of people, the shifts of events, the subtle signs that pulsed like invisible currents beneath the surface of life. And when you spoke of what you saw, when you tried to share the warnings that burned in your chest, the world turned its back. They called you negative. That word clung to you like a shadow. You would speak of dangers ahead, of cracks forming in the foundation, of storms that would one day arrive, and they would sigh, shake their heads, and dismiss it with a smile. "You're too negative," they said. But what they called negativity was truth that arrived before its time. What they called negativity was foresight they weren't ready to accept. What they labeled as darkness was simply the light you carried shining ahead, too far for their eyes to follow. They called you overthinking. They mocked the way you noticed details others missed, the way you questioned things they accepted without pause, the way you sought meaning where they saw only noise. "Stop overthinking," they laughed, as though depth were a weakness, as though care were a flaw, as though your restless search for clarity was proof of something broken in you. They did not realize that what they mocked as overthinking was the very gift that would one day protect them. They did not realize that your questions were the armor they lacked. They did not realize that your careful mind was not restless confusion, but disciplined perception. They called you difficult. They called you stubborn. They called you hard to be around. And perhaps you felt it too, how your very presence seemed to unsettle them, how your insistence on truth made them uncomfortable, how your refusal to go along with their illusions made you the target of their jokes and their gossip. You did not fit into their easy laughter, their shallow games, their casual blindness. And so, they labeled you difficult, as though the fault was in you, as though the problem was not that you saw too much, but that you existed at all. They laughed in groups, didn't they? You remember it vividly. The way their conversations turned into small theaters of mockery, their laughter rising like waves whenever you left the room. They thought you couldn't hear. They thought you didn't know. But you felt it. You felt the weight of their gossip pressing against your spirit. You felt the sting of their whispers even when they smiled to your face. They thought their laughter made them stronger, but all it revealed was their fear. For deep down, they knew there was something about you they could not control, something they could not categorize, something they could not understand. And people often mock what they fear. Yet still you carried on. You carried on at that desk, in those long nights, with the lamp burning while the rest of the world dreamed its shallow dreams. You carried on with your thoughts, with your patterns, with your relentless pursuit of what was true. They thought you were wasting your time. They thought you were burning your energy on foolishness. But what you were doing was not waste. It was training. It was the sharpening of a blade. It was the quiet forging of sight that would one day cut through every illusion. And you always knew, that you were not wrong. You were early. That is what they could not grasp. Truth that comes too soon feels like falsehood to those who are not ready. Sight that reaches beyond the present feels like madness to those still trapped in the moment. You were never wrong, chosen one. You were simply early. And being early is the heaviest burden of all. You felt it when you warned them about the people they trusted blindly. You saw the cracks in character, the shadows behind the smiles, the manipulations hidden in charm. You spoke of it. You pointed it out. You tried to shield them from the fall. But they refused. They laughed. They rolled their eyes and said, "You're always so negative. Always so suspicious." But you weren't suspicious. You were perceptive. You weren't paranoid. You were awake. You felt it when you cautioned them about the paths they rushed down, business ventures that looked glamorous but reeked of instability, relationships that glittered on the surface but reeked of betrayal, decisions made in haste that carried consequences they refused to see. You warned them, not because you wanted to be right, but because you wanted to protect. And still, they dismissed you. Still, they mocked. Still, they smiled at your words as though they were nothing more than anxious ramblings. The life of the chosen one is not lived in applause. It is lived in misunderstanding. It is lived in the ache of carrying wisdom that no one around you wants to hear. It is lived in the tension of knowing that your truth is real while the world calls it false. It is lived in the silence of late nights, and the sting of gossip, and the loneliness of being the only one who sees. And yet, through it all, you remained. You remained faithful to your sight. You remained loyal to your intuition. You remained anchored in the knowing that though they mocked, though they whispered, though they rolled their eyes, you were not wrong. You were early. And what does it mean to be early? It means to be a pioneer. It means to walk a road no one else has mapped. It means to endure the laughter of those who do not yet understand. It means to plant seeds that look like nothing but soil to the untrained eye, only to one day reveal fruit that feeds nations. To be early is to be unseen. To be early is to be rejected. To be early is to be misunderstood. But to be early is also to be chosen. For the chosen are never placed in the middle of the crowd. They are always placed ahead. This is the life you've lived, chosen one. A life of isolation, but not emptiness. A life of ridicule, but not foolishness. A life of delay, but not denial. They called you negative, but you were protective. They called you overthinking, but you were discerning. They called you difficult, but you were strong enough to resist their illusions. They called you wrong, but you were never wrong. You were early. And being early is the mark of those the universe trusts with vision. At first, it was only a whisper. A subtle change in the air. The kind of silence that lingers too long in a crowded room. The kind of pause that makes people shift in their chairs, glance at each other, and wonder if perhaps they had been wrong about you. For years they dismissed you. For years they rolled their eyes, waving away your words like smoke. But now the smoke has become fire. Now the things you saw, the things you warned of, the things they mocked and labeled paranoia, are unfolding, one by one, right in front of their eyes. It begins small. A deal they thought was indestructible collapses overnight. They had been so certain, so arrogant, so dismissive of your caution. You remember the conversations. You remember how you urged them to look again, to think carefully, to pay attention to the cracks that were already showing. They didn't listen. They laughed. They called you negative. But now, the contracts have crumbled. The investors have vanished. The empire they thought was unshakable lies in pieces on the floor. And though they try to hide it, though they whisper instead of shout, you can feel it. They are remembering your words. Then, another thread unravels. The manipulator they swore was a friend, a mentor, a leader worth following, exposed. The mask they wore for so long finally slips, and beneath it, the truth is ugly. Betrayal surfaces. Lies are uncovered. And suddenly, the one they defended with such passion is revealed for who they truly are. Do you remember how they scoffed at you? Do you remember how they told you that you were too suspicious, that you always see the worst in people? And yet, here it is, the proof, undeniable, glaring. They ask themselves now, in hushed tones, "How did you know? How could you see what we couldn't?" It doesn't stop there. One by one, the stories unravel. The polished relationship they flaunted like a crown jewel shatters into a messy breakup. The perfect smiles vanish, replaced with bitterness and blame. You saw it long before, didn't you? You saw the emptiness in their eyes, the subtle disrespect in their words, the cracks in the foundation no one else wanted to acknowledge. When you spoke of it, they brushed it off. They told you to mind your own business. They told you that you overthink everything. But now, as the love they flaunted collapses in public, they cannot help but remember, you warned them. And so the whispers begin to spread. The same voices that once mocked you, the same lips that ridiculed your insight, now speak with hesitation, with quiet awe, with confusion they cannot hide. How did they know? They ask each other. How could they see so clearly, when all of us were blind? The boardrooms echo with the question. The phones light up with urgent calls, desperate voices seeking the clarity they once rejected. Shock spreads across faces like a shadow at dusk, a dawning awareness that everything they dismissed was not foolishness, but foresight. Your foresight. They replay the conversations in their minds now. They remember the warnings they brushed aside. They hear your voice echoing through the chambers of their regret. And though they do not always speak it aloud, though pride grips their tongues and keeps them from confessing it to you directly, they know. Deep inside they know. You were right. You were always right. The shift has begun. It is not sudden, it is gradual, like the turning of a tide. At first they fight it, clinging to their pride, clinging to the belief that they could not have been so blind. But the evidence grows too heavy. The collapse is too obvious. The revelations are too undeniable. One by one, their excuses falter. One by one, their certainty crumbles. One by one, their laughter fades into silence. And in that silence, the truth rises. The truth that you were never negative, you were discerning. The truth that you were never paranoid, you were perceptive. The truth that you were never overthinking, you were ahead. Listen to them now, in their late-night conversations, in their secret confessions, in the quiet tones they use when they think no one is listening. How did they know? The question haunts them. It unsettles them. It refuses to let them rest. Because deep down, they realize that what they dismissed as luck was not luck. What they brushed off as coincidence was not coincidence. What they called suspicion was not suspicion, it was vision. And vision cannot be denied forever. Look around you, chosen one. The same people who once laughed at your silence are now desperate for your words. The same people who once mocked your caution are now searching for your wisdom. The same people who once dismissed you as difficult are now recognizing that difficulty was strength, that refusal to be blind, that unwillingness to compromise truth, was the very thing that preserved you when their worlds fell apart. They are waking up. Slowly, reluctantly, but surely they are waking up. And the shift is irreversible. For once the truth begins to reveal itself, it cannot be hidden again. Once the cracks appear, they cannot be unseen. Once the mask falls, it cannot be worn again. And now, one by one, they are forced to face what you have known all along. The collapse of illusions has begun. The vindication of your vision is here. This is not the end of the story. This is the turning point. The beginning of the great reversal. The moment when everything they thought they knew starts to unravel, and everything you carried in silence begins to shine. The whispers are turning into confessions. The doubt is turning into questions. The ridicule is turning into awe. And though they may never say it to your face, though their pride may never allow them to admit it openly, their hearts already confess it. You were right. You were always right. The shift has begun, and nothing can stop it now. For so long, you thought you were alone. Alone in your seeing. Alone in your warnings. Alone in the burden of clarity that weighed on you like a crown made of fire. For so long, it felt as if every voice was against you, every room was hostile, every gathering turned into a quiet trial where your insight was judged and dismissed before it ever had a chance to breathe. But here is the truth you never fully saw: you were never as alone as you felt. There was always a network. Quiet. Hidden. Watching. A network of those who noticed what you noticed but lacked the courage to say it aloud. A network of those who saw your eyes sharpen when lies were spoken, who felt the weight of your silence when deception filled the air, who watched you withdraw not because you were wrong, but because you were right. They saw. They remembered. They kept score. The colleague in the corner of the meeting room, the one who never spoke up but always nodded when your concerns were brushed aside, they were listening. They were keeping track. They knew, even if they never defended you, that your accuracy rate was unlike anything they had ever seen. The family member who sat silently at dinners while others laughed at your negativity, while others rolled their eyes at your overthinking, they weren't laughing inside. They were holding back words. They were biting their tongue. They were thinking, "They're right. But I can't say it. Not here. Not now." The friend who never openly defended you, who never challenged the mob when they mocked you, don't mistake their silence for agreement. They were protecting themselves. They were afraid. But in their private heart, they whispered, "One day they'll see." And now, chosen one day has arrived. The tide has shifted, and with it, the voices that were once locked in silence are beginning to rise. One by one. Carefully at first, trembling at the edges of their fear, but louder with each passing moment. The colleague who only nodded in secret now clears their throat in the middle of the boardroom and says, "Actually, they were right about this. They've been right about all of it." The family member who once sat still at the dinner table now lifts their voice, steady and unwavering. "Do you remember when they warned us about this? Do you remember how we ignored them? Well, they were right. And we owe them an apology." The friend who never defended you before now speaks with a trembling conviction. "I always knew. I just didn't have the courage to say it then. But I see it now. And I won't be silent anymore." One voice becomes two. Two becomes four. Four becomes a chorus. The hidden network that once whispered in shadows begins to step forward into the light. And here is the breathtaking part. They are not just defending you, they are revering you. They are not just admitting you were right, they are confessing that they always knew you were right. They are not just correcting the record, they are rewriting the story. The narrative that once painted you as difficult, negative, paranoid is dissolving. In its place rises a new narrative, one that declares you brilliant, perceptive, visionary. The network is building that narrative for you, amplifying it, spreading it like wildfire through the halls where your name was once mocked. Each admission gives permission for another. Each confession becomes a spark, igniting the courage of others who were silent. The effect compounds. The silence collapses. And suddenly, what was once a hidden network becomes a movement. It is no longer just about you being right. It is about them realizing that they betrayed their own intuition by not standing with you. It is about them finding their own voices again, voices that were stifled by fear, by social pressure, by the weight of conformity. Your vindication becomes their liberation. When they say, "You were right," what they are really saying is, "I saw it too, and I should have trusted myself. I should have trusted you." When they say, "I always knew," what they are really saying is, "I was afraid, but your courage gives me courage now." And here, this is the divine irony. The very isolation that once crushed you becomes the magnet that draws them out. Because you stood alone, they now stand together. Because you endured the silence, they now fill the air with sound. Because you bore the weight of being dismissed, they now bear the responsibility of acknowledging their silence. And they do. Not in whispers anymore. Not in corners. But in the open. In boardrooms. At dinner tables. In public spaces where the air once carried the sound of your dismissal, it now carries the sound of your defense. The energy shifts. The power shifts. The atmosphere shifts. You are no longer the misunderstood outsider. You are the center point around which the conversation turns. You are the reference, the evidence, the proof that discernment is real, that intuition is powerful, that truth always finds its way through the cracks. The network awakens, and with its awakening, the isolation you once carried dissolves into something greater. No longer alone. No longer dismissed. Now surrounded. Now defended. Now amplified. And as they step forward, as they take their place beside you, their voices begin to form a shield. Where once you stood vulnerable, mocked, rejected, now you stand fortified. A chorus behind you. A movement rising. A truth too loud to be silenced. And chosen one, this is only the beginning. For the network that awakens is not just here to defend you. They are here to elevate you. To remind the world of what it missed. To shine a light so bright that even those still clinging to pride will be forced to see. What was once a solitary flame has become a wildfire. What was once isolation has become power. What was once silence has become the roar of recognition. The network awakens. And when it does, there is no going back. It begins with hesitation. A pause in the air. The sound of pride cracking under the unbearable weight of truth. For years they dismissed you. For years they rolled their eyes, scoffed at your warnings, laughed at your insistence that things were not as they seemed. But now, chosen one, the laughter has died. The eyes that once rolled now drop in shame. The mouths that once mocked now tremble with words they never imagined they would be forced to speak. Apologies. Not whispered in corners. Not mumbled behind closed doors. Not quiet, reluctant concessions made only to soothe their own guilt. No, this is different. This is public. This is undeniable. This is humiliation laid bare, and you, once mocked, once silenced, once cast aside, stand in the center as the world rewrites your story in real time. It happens first in the workplace. The boss who used to sideline you, who bypassed your ideas, who presented your insights as paranoia or obstruction, now stands before the entire team, their voice shaking with something between regret and desperation. They clear their throat, searching for words, knowing that every eye in the room is watching, waiting, remembering. And then it comes. They were right. We didn't listen. And because of that, we all paid the price. The words echo. The team shifts uncomfortably in their chairs. You don't move. You don't need to. The moment speaks for itself. For years, you carried the weight of being dismissed. For years, you endured the humiliation of watching your insight ignored, only to see disaster unfold exactly as you predicted. And now, the one whose silence you must confess before witnesses, that it was not you who failed, but them. The silence that follows their words is deafening. It is the silence of realization. The silence of credibility collapsing. The silence of an entire room reevaluating every moment they judged you unfairly. And that's only the beginning. Soon, it spreads beyond the office, beyond the meetings and boardrooms. The apologies ripple outward into the public sphere. The critic who mocked you most viciously now turns to social media, not with bravado, but with trembling humility. They type words they never thought they would. I owe someone an apology. I dismissed them. I mocked them. I was wrong. They were right. About everything. The post is seen. It is shared. It is screenshotted, reposted, dissected. Their humiliation is no longer private. It is digital. Permanent. Their pride has been archived for the world to see, an eternal record of their reversal. And your vindication is written not by your hand, but by theirs. One post leads to another. One critic's apology creates space for others to step forward. And suddenly, the same platforms that once carried ridicule are now overflowing with confession. It is no longer you defending yourself. It is no longer you fighting for credibility. The very people who once tore your reputation apart are now stitching it back together with their own hands, thread by thread, word by word, apology by apology. And oh, the irony, how rich it tastes. For their embarrassment is not quiet. It is not contained. It is public. It is loud. It is undeniable. And it is rewriting your reputation in real time. Listen closely, chosen one. The apologies are not only about the facts. They are not just about being wrong. They are about how they treated you. They apologize for the mockery. They apologize for the laughter. They apologize for the times they made you feel insane for simply telling the truth. They apologize for silencing you, for dismissing you, for branding your vision as a curse when it was the greatest gift in the room. And though their words may falter, though their voices may tremble, their shame speaks louder than any speech could. You can see it in their eyes. You can feel it in the air. They are not just embarrassed, they are transformed. Because public humiliation changes people. It rewrites the brain. It leaves scars that can never be erased. And in those scars, a new story takes root. The story of your genius, the story of their blindness, the story of a truth they could not kill no matter how hard they tried. The apologies multiply. Each one gives permission for another. Each one cracks the dam of denial a little wider. Until at last, it is no longer just individuals, it is groups, committees, organizations, entire communities. Where once they avoided your input, now they insist upon it. Where once they silence your questions, now they celebrate them as essential. Where once they excluded you, now they restructure themselves to include you at the center. The very architecture of power bends. And it bends around you. Chosen one, the same voices that push you to the margins now pull you to the spotlight. Not because they suddenly became wise, but because they were forced to see what the universe had already revealed. Your vision was never a threat. It was a necessity. And so they apologize. Not only to you, but before the eyes of those who once believed their lies about you. They apologize not only with words, but with actions, restoring your credibility, amplifying your voice, rewriting the story of who you are. It is the most satisfying reversal in human history. The stage is set. The lights are bright. The crowd is watching. And the people who mocked you must now bow before the truth of your brilliance. Not quietly. Not privately. But publicly, where everyone can see, where everyone can remember, where your vindication is carved into memory forever. It happens slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, like the steady rising of the sun. But soon the light is undeniable. Where once you were ignored, now you are sought out. Where once you were dismissed, now you are desired. Where once you stood at the margins, now the center shifts to you. The invitations begin quietly, an email here, a message there. We'd like your input. We'd value your perspective. We'd like you to join the conversation. But they do not stop there. The requests multiply. The invitations overflow. The very same people who once silenced you now compete for your attention. They do not want to move forward without you, because they have learned, painfully, that moving forward without you leads only to collapse. And so, the committees that once scoffed at your questions now pause their agendas, waiting for your voice before they dare proceed. The boards that once dismissed your discernment now hold their breath, watching your eyes, searching for the smallest sign of approval. The communities that once cast you out now reorganize themselves around your insight, orbiting you as if you were the gravitational center holding everything in balance. Chosen one, this is elevation. Not the fleeting applause of temporary victory, but the lasting reverence of recognition hard-earned, undeniable, eternal. The camera shifts. You are no longer outside the door, waiting for permission to enter. You are no longer standing in the corner, speaking words no one hears. You are no longer asking for a seat at the table. No. You are building the table. The room that once made you feel small now cannot function without you. The voices that once drowned you out now fall silent when you speak. The hands that once waved you away now scramble to take notes on every word you say. And you, chosen one, you do not gloat. You do not boast. You do not need to. For your power does not come from their approval. It comes from the truth you carried all along. It comes from the vision they could not see, the discernment they could not recognize, the wisdom they could not comprehend. Now they see it. Now they revere it. Now they revolve around it. Meetings reshape themselves. Conversations reroute themselves. Decisions reorganize themselves. The questions that once earned you ridicule are now treated as sacred keys. What do you see? They ask. Where is the danger? Where is the path forward? What do we not yet notice that you already know? They wait. They watch. They defer. And with each moment, your authority crystallizes, not the kind of authority handed out by fragile hierarchies, but the kind of authority that flows naturally from undeniable truth. This is not power you seized. This is not influence you begged for. This is recognition. Recognition that you were always the one seeing clearly, always the one discerning deeply, always the one whose voice carried the weight of foresight. And now, they cannot imagine moving without you. Communities reorganize. Families reframe. Companies restructure. The center has shifted, and it has shifted to you. The irony is sharp. The very traits they once despised, your questions, your caution, your refusal to accept shallow answers, are now the pillars they lean on. The very qualities they once mocked as negativity, overthinking, difficulty, are now the treasures they cannot function without. And you stand, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with calm. Because you always knew this moment would come. You always knew that truth, once revealed, cannot be silenced. You always knew that the time would arrive when they would finally recognize the genius they tried so hard to erase. Now is that time. Watch as the ripple spreads. Your reputation travels farther than your presence. People who have never spoken to you, who once knew of you only through rumors of dismissal, now hear the truth, that you see what others cannot see, that you know what others cannot know, that your discernment is not ordinary intuition but extraordinary perception. And so strangers seek you. Leaders request you. Communities shape themselves around you. The marginal seat they once denied you is irrelevant now, because the margins have collapsed. You are no longer invited to their table. They are invited to yours. And as you sit at the center, calm, composed, steady, you understand the full weight of this reversal. It was never about fitting in. It was never about forcing them to see. No. You are building the table. The room that once made you feel small now cannot function without you. The voices that once drowned you out now fall silent when you speak. The hands that once waved you away now scramble to take notes on every word you say. And you, chosen one, you do not gloat. You do not boast. You do not need to. For your power does not come from their approval. It comes from the truth you carried all along. It comes from the vision they could not see, the discernment they could not recognize, the wisdom they could not comprehend. Now they see it. Now they revere it. Now they revolve around it. Meetings reshape themselves. Conversations reroute themselves. Decisions reorganize themselves. The questions that once earned you ridicule are now treated as sacred keys. What do you see? They ask. Where is the danger? Where is the path forward? What do we not yet notice that you already know? They wait. They watch. They defer. And with each moment, your authority crystallizes, not the kind of authority handed out by fragile hierarchies, but the kind of authority that flows naturally from undeniable truth. This is not power you seized. This is consciousness unfolding. This is the universe itself using you as an instrument to demonstrate what is possible when vision outruns the ordinary. For you, chosen one, were never simply playing their game. You weren't made to. You weren't designed to. Their rules, their measures, their victories, they were not yours. You were moving on a different plane, playing by different laws, walking to a rhythm too subtle for their ears to hear. While they played checkers, you played chess. Not because you wished to be clever. Not because you wished to outwit them. But because your mind, your spirit, your very being, was tuned to a higher frequency. While they moved pieces without vision, you saw the board. You saw the strategy. You saw not just the next move, but the unfolding of the entire game. And while they thought themselves ahead, you were already beyond the board itself. Because the truth is this: you weren't even playing chess. You were playing a bigger game. A cosmic game. A game of patterns, of alignments, of constellations hidden inside human choices. Look back. Can you see it now? The threads that once felt like chaos were never chaos at all. They were constellations, stars scattered across the sky, meaningless to the untrained eye, but revealing maps to those who know how to see. And you knew how to see. You traced the patterns before the shapes appeared. You drew the lines between the stars before others even noticed the stars themselves. This is the gift of the chosen one. To walk among the blind, carrying sight. To live among the deaf, carrying sound. To move among those caught in the game of surfaces while seeing the depth beneath. You weren't playing their game. You were observing it. You were decoding it. You were learning its patterns not to join it, but to transcend it. And this is the evolution. Because your life was never simply about proving them wrong. It was about proving that there is more. More than the shallow games of power. More than the fragile trophies of status. More than the illusions of success built on sand. You showed them a higher plane. You revealed, through your very existence, that a new level of consciousness is possible. One where vision matters more than popularity. One where truth outlasts perception. One where patience defeats arrogance. One where alignment with the universe itself outweighs the noise of the crowd. They could not understand it then. They cannot fully understand it now. Because evolution always appears first as disruption. Always. The higher plane unsettles the lower. The deeper truth rattles the shallow illusion. The greater light blinds the unprepared eye. That is why they whispered. That is why they rolled their eyes. That is why they dismissed you. It was not truly you they dismissed. It was the higher consciousness within you. And what the world has always done with prophets, with seers, with pioneers, it did with you. It mocked. It doubted. It resisted. But evolution cannot be resisted forever. The tide of consciousness rises whether or not the old shorelines welcome it. And now, the tide has risen. Now, the new level of awareness has revealed itself. Now, what was once dismissed as strange or threatening is being recognized as necessary. You, chosen one, are the embodiment of that shift. You are not just a person vindicated, you are a signal. A marker in time. A proof that humanity itself can evolve into higher ways of seeing, knowing, and living. When they look at you now, they are not just seeing your triumph. They are seeing the mirror of their own limitations. They are realizing that while they played small games of checkers, you walked the infinite board of the cosmos. While they fought over positions and pieces, you aligned yourself with the currents of destiny itself. This is why you stand calm in the midst of their awakening. Because you were never competing. You were never comparing. You were never scrambling for the crown of their shallow kingdom. You were building a new kingdom altogether. One invisible at first, but inevitable in time. And now, the cosmic perspective reveals itself clearly. You were not just early. You were evolutionary. You were not just correct. You were transcendent. You were not just vindicated. You became the living evidence that the universe always rewards truth, always lifts vision, always protects those who align themselves with its deeper currents. See the constellations. See the data points, the synchronicities, the patterns once dismissed as coincidences. They were never coincidences. They were breadcrumbs of destiny, guiding you forward while the others laughed. You followed them, step by step, even when the path felt lonely. And now those same constellations glow above you, undeniable, radiant, impossible to ignore. This is not just your story. It is the story of evolution itself. It is the story of consciousness rising. It is the story of humanity glimpsing, through you, what it means to step beyond the shallow game and into the infinite one. And so, when they ask now, "How did you know?" the answer is cosmic. You knew because you were attuned. You knew because you listened to the currents no one else could hear. You knew because the universe whispered, and you did not ignore it. You knew because your vision was not confined to the board in front of you, but stretched to the constellations above you. This is the greater truth. This is the cosmic perspective. This is the evolution unfolding through you. You were not playing their game. You were playing a bigger one. And now, they finally see it. If you recognize yourself in this message, chosen one, pause. Breathe. Let it sink in. Because this moment is not an accident. This is not just another video, not just another scroll, not just another passing voice in the endless sea of noise. This moment is alignment. This moment is confirmation. This moment is the universe leaning close to whisper, "You are not alone." For too long you thought you were. You thought your vision was solitary. You thought your path was exile. You thought your awareness was punishment. But hear this clearly. The fact that you are hearing these words right now is proof that you were never alone. You were always part of something larger, something invisible, something waiting for this very hour to reveal itself. Look around you, not with your physical eyes, but with the eyes of spirit. Do you feel it? The resonance? The echo? The recognition? Every chosen one who has ever felt misunderstood, dismissed, silenced, shamed, right now, across the world, they are hearing this same call. Right now, in living rooms and bedrooms, on headphones and speakers, in cities and villages,